The morning air was crisp as Detective Inspector Kate Wilson adjusted her camera strap and blended into the growing crowd outside Buckingham Palace. To everyone around her, she looked like just another tourist eager to capture the famous changing of the guard ceremony. But Kate wasn't there for photos or memories. She was there because somewhere in this crowd was a person who wanted to hurt innocent people. For 3 long months, Kate had been following a dangerous group of criminals. These weren't ordinary thieves or troublemakers. They were the kind of people who planned terrible things that could hurt many innocent folks at once. The intelligence team had picked up chatter about something big happening during today's ceremony. Something that would turn this peaceful tourist attraction into breaking news around the world. Kate pulled out her phone and pretended to take selfies while actually scanning the crowd. Families with excited children pointed at the palace gates. Elderly couples shared stories about their last visit decades ago. Young backpackers from different countries chatted in various languages. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to be there, which made Kate's job both easier and harder. The real threat would try to blend in just like she was doing. The red-coated guards began their march toward the palace gates. Their tall black hats bobbed in perfect rhythm as hundreds of cameras clicked and whirred. Kate had always admired their discipline. These young men and women stood perfectly still for hours no matter what tourists did around them. They were trained to ignore distractions, weather, and even rude behavior. Today, that training might work against them. Kate's earpiece crackled, softly with updates from her team. Agent Rodriguez was positioned near the Victoria Memorial. Agent Thompson had a clear view from the other side of the crowd. But even with all their training and technology, finding one dangerous person among hundreds of innocent tourists was like finding a needle in a haystack. The crowd pressed closer as the ceremony began. Kate felt the familiar tension in her shoulders that came with high-stakes operations. She'd been doing this job for 8 years, but it never got easier. Every face could be a threat. Every bag could contain something dangerous. Every sudden movement could be the start of something terrible. A group of school children pushed past her, their teacher frantically trying to keep them together. An older man complained loudly about not being able to see over taller people. A young couple argued about the best angle for their wedding photos. Normal people doing normal things, completely unaware that someone among them had very different plans for this beautiful Tuesday morning. Kate checked her watch. 11:37. If the intelligence was correct, whatever was going to happen would begin soon. She took a deep breath and continued scanning faces, looking for the one person who didn't quite belong. The person who was trying too hard to look normal. The person who might be carrying something that didn't belong at a tourist ceremony. The guards continued their precise movements, unaware that their routine morning was about to become anything but routine. At exactly 11:47, Kate spotted him. A man in his 30s wearing a blue jacket and carrying a large camera bag was moving through the crowd in a way that didn't match everyone else's behavior. While other tourists stopped to take photos or chat with friends, this man kept walking with purpose. His eyes weren't on the guards or the ceremony. They were focused on something else entirely. Kate's heart rate jumped as she watched him navigate through the crowd. He wasn't rushing, but he wasn't wandering either. Every step seemed calculated. Every pause seemed planned. This was the behavior her training had taught her to recognize. This was someone with a mission. The man stopped about 15 feet away, from where Lance Corporal David Harper stood at attention. Harper was a 22-year-old guard who had joined the Army straight out of college. He stood perfectly still in his red uniform and tall black hat, his rifle held at the correct angle, his eyes focused straight ahead as he'd been trained to do. Kate began moving closer, her mind racing through options. She could try to signal her backup team, but that would take precious seconds. She could attempt to alert Harper, but the guards were trained to ignore distractions from tourists. Any sudden movement or shout might also alert the suspicious man that he'd been spotted. The man in the blue jacket reached into his camera bag. From Kate's angle, she couldn't see exactly what he was pulling out, but his movements were too deliberate, too focused. This wasn't someone reaching for a camera lens or memory card. This was someone accessing something they'd hidden carefully. Kate's training kicked in. Years of studying crowd behavior, threat assessment, and split-second decision-making all condensed into a single moment of clarity. She had maybe 10 seconds before whatever was in that bag became a much bigger problem. The crowd around her continued taking photos and chatting excitedly. Children pointed at the guards' colorful uniforms. Parents helped little ones see over the barriers. Everyone was having a wonderful time, completely unaware that something dangerous was unfolding just a few feet away. Kate made her decision. There was no time for subtle approaches or careful coordination with her team. Sometimes the best plan was the most unexpected one. Sometimes you had to do something that looked completely wrong to prevent something much worse from happening. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring the annoyed looks from other tourists. "Excuse me, sorry. Excuse me," she muttered as she squeezed between families and couples. Her eyes stayed locked on Harper's position and the man in the blue jacket. When she was close enough, Kate did something that would be recorded by dozens of tourist cameras and shared millions of times on social media. She walked right up to Lance Corporal Harper and slapped him across the face. The sound echoed across the courtyard. The crowd gasped in shock. Cameras turned toward her instead of the ceremony. Harper's head snapped to the side from the impact, his perfect military posture broken for the first time that morning. "This is ridiculous," Kate shouted, playing the role of an angry tourist. "I can't see anything with you standing there. Move out of the way." Security personnel immediately began moving toward her. Tourists started recording with their phones. Some people in the crowd began shouting at her for being so disrespectful. Others seemed too shocked to react at all. But Kate wasn't watching the crowd's reaction. She was watching Harper, who had stumbled backward from the slap and turned his head at exactly the right moment. Because in that same instant, the device hidden in the blue jacket man's camera bag activated with a small but powerful explosion. The explosion wasn't huge, but it was loud enough to send the crowd into immediate panic. Pieces of metal and plastic flew through the air where Harper had been standing just seconds before. The blast created a small crater in the pavement and sent smoke billowing across the courtyard. People screamed and ran in different directions. Parents grabbed their children and rushed toward the exits. Elderly visitors stumbled as younger people pushed past them. The organized, peaceful ceremony turned into chaos in the span of 3 seconds. Harper hit the ground hard, his red uniform now dusty and torn. But he was alive. The slap that had seemed so cruel and random had actually pushed him out of the direct path of the explosion. Instead of taking the full force of the blast to his chest and face, he'd only been knocked over by the shockwave. Kate quickly melted back into the panicking crowd, her job as the angry tourist complete. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick-coded message to her backup team. The threat had been neutralized, but now they needed to catch the person responsible before he disappeared in all the confusion. Emergency sirens began wailing in the distance. Police cars and ambulances were already on their way, their response time impressive even by London standards. The palace security team had trained for situations like this, and their protocols kicked in immediately. Harper slowly got to his feet, confused and shaken but not seriously injured. His training told him to maintain his position, but his human instincts told him something very wrong had just happened. He looked around for the woman who had slapped him, but she seemed to have vanished into the crowd of fleeing tourists. The man in the blue jacket was also trying to disappear, but Kate's teammates had been watching. Agent Rodriguez appeared behind him as he attempted to blend in with other panicking tourists. Agent Thompson blocked his exit route near the memorial. Within minutes, the would-be bomber was surrounded and quietly detained while most of the crowd was still focused on the explosion site. Medical teams arrived and immediately began checking Harper for injuries. He insisted he was fine, just confused about what had happened. The paramedics found minor cuts from flying debris and some bruising from hitting the pavement, but nothing serious. He kept asking about the woman who had slapped him, wondering if she had been hurt in the explosion. Meanwhile, bomb disposal experts examined what remained of the device. It had been designed to cause maximum harm to anyone standing within a 10-foot radius. The metal fragments would have acted like deadly projectiles, aimed at chest and head height. Anyone directly in front of the device when it detonated would have faced serious injury or worse. The investigation team quickly pieced together what had really happened. Security cameras from multiple angles showed the precise timing of events. Kate's slap had occurred exactly 4 seconds before the explosion. Harper's movement backward and to the side had placed him just outside the device's most dangerous range. Palace officials began the delicate process of managing the situation. They couldn't reveal the full truth about what had happened without compromising ongoing security operations. But they also couldn't let an innocent woman be blamed for what looked like an unprovoked attack on a guard. The tourist videos were already going viral on social media. Next Buckingham Palace, slap began trending within hours. People around the world were sharing their outrage about the disrespectful tourist who had attacked a ceremonial guard. Comment sections filled with angry messages about proper behavior and respect for traditions. But inside the secure briefing rooms of Thames House, a very different conversation was taking place. Kate's actions were being analyzed and praised by senior intelligence officials. Her split-second decision had prevented what could have been a major international incident and potentially saved a young soldier's life. By evening, the story had exploded across every social media platform on Earth. The video of Kate slapping Harper had been viewed over 50 million times. News channels around the world were showing the footage and discussing tourist behavior at historic sites. Talk show hosts were making jokes about rude visitors, and online forums were filled with people expressing their anger about the incident. Harper spent the rest of the day in medical observation, even though his injuries were minor. The doctors wanted to make sure he hadn't suffered any hidden damage from the blast. As he lay in the hospital bed, he watched the news coverage on the television, still confused about what had really happened. The woman who had slapped him was being called everything from the most disrespectful tourist ever to an embarrassment to travelers everywhere. Social media detectives were trying to identify her from the video footage. Some people were calling for her to be banned from the United Kingdom permanently. But Harper couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. The timing seemed too strange. Why had the woman appeared so suddenly? Why had she chosen that exact moment to complain? And why had there been an explosion just seconds after she slapped him? Late that evening, 2 people in dark suits arrived at his hospital room. They introduced themselves as representatives from Palace Security and asked if he felt well enough to answer some questions. Harper agreed, curious about what they wanted to know. The conversation that followed changed everything he thought he understood about the day's events. They showed him security footage from multiple camera angles that captured details the tourist videos had missed. They explained about the man in the blue jacket and the device he had been carrying. They walked him through the exact timing of events and how the woman's actions had affected his position. "You mean she wasn't just being rude?" Harper asked, his mind struggling to process this new information. Lance Corporal Harper, one of the officials, said gently, "That woman saved your life. If you had remained in your original position when that device detonated, you would likely have been killed or severely injured." Harper stared at the ceiling, trying to understand how something that had seemed so wrong could actually have been so right. The woman everyone was calling disrespectful and awful had actually been a hero. She had risked her own safety and reputation to protect him from a threat he didn't even know existed. The officials explained that they couldn't reveal the full truth to the public yet. The investigation was ongoing, and exposing the details might compromise other security operations. But they wanted Harper to know what had really happened, both for his own peace of mind and because he deserved to understand why his normal day had turned so chaotic. They also told him about the man who had been arrested. He was part of a group that had been planning several attacks around London. The device at Buckingham Palace was supposed to be just the beginning. By stopping this first attack and capturing one of the key members, the security services had been able to prevent several other incidents that could have hurt many innocent people. Harper asked if he could meet the woman who had saved him, but the officials explained that wouldn't be possible. She was still working undercover on related cases, and maintaining her secret identity was crucial for public safety. They could only tell him that she was a highly trained professional who had made a very difficult decision under extreme pressure. That night, Harper lay awake thinking about everything he had learned. Tomorrow he would have to return to his duties knowing that the viral video showing his assault was still spreading around the world. He would have to stand at attention while tourists pointed and whispered about him being the guard who got slapped. But he would also know the truth, and somehow that made all the difference in the world. 3 days after the incident, Buckingham Palace released an unusual statement. It was carefully worded and didn't reveal any classified information, but it praised the quick thinking of security personnel during what they called a minor security incident at the ceremony. Most news outlets barely noticed the statement, as they were still focused on the viral slapping video. Harper returned to his duties the next morning, wearing his perfectly pressed red uniform and tall black hat. As he took his position outside the palace gates, he noticed some tourists pointing at him and whispering. A few even took extra photos, clearly recognizing him as the guard who got slapped. But Harper stood a little taller that morning. He knew something they didn't know. He understood that sometimes the most heroic acts look like something completely different to people who don't have the full story. He had learned that reality is often much more complicated than what appears in a short video clip. Meanwhile, across London, a series of coordinated raids were taking place. Using information gathered from the arrested bomber and evidence from the failed attack, security teams were dismantling the entire criminal network. Safe houses were searched, suspects were arrested, and dangerous materials were confiscated. All of this happened quietly, without media attention or public fanfare. Kate continued her work, moving on to the next case that needed her attention. In intelligence work, there was always another threat to investigate, another plot to uncover, another group of innocent people to protect. The viral video of her slapping Harper had actually helped maintain her cover identity, as no one would suspect that the rude tourist was actually a highly trained agent. The investigation revealed that the network had been planning attacks at 5 different London tourist attractions over the following 2 weeks. The failed Buckingham Palace attack had been meant as an opening statement, a way to announce their presence and create fear. Instead, it had led to their complete downfall. Within intelligence circles, Kate's unconventional approach became a case study. Training instructors use the incident to teach new agents about thinking creatively under pressure. Sometimes the best solution wasn't the one found in any manual or protocol. Sometimes you had to trust your instincts and do something that looked completely wrong to prevent something much worse from happening. The viral video gradually faded from social media, replaced by new trends and fresh outrage about different topics. People moved on to other stories, other videos, other reasons to express their opinions online. The incident became just another piece of internet history, filed away with countless other moments that had briefly captured the world's attention. But for Harper, the memory remained vivid. Every day as he stood guard, he remembered the lesson he had learned about appearances and reality. He had gained a new appreciation for the people who worked behind the scenes to keep everyone safe, the men and women whose most important work would never be publicly acknowledged. He also developed a different perspective on the tourists who visited the palace. Many of them took photos and videos without understanding the full context of what they were seeing. They captured moments and shared them with the world, often creating stories that were very different from the truth. 6 months later, Harper received a small package with no return address. Inside was a simple note that said, "Thank you for your service and your understanding. Stay safe." There was no signature, but somehow he knew who had sent it. Harper kept the note in his wallet, a reminder that heroes don't always look like heroes, and that sometimes the most important stories are the ones that never get told. He continued his duties with pride, knowing that he was part of something bigger than what any tourist video could capture. The ceremony continued every day, just as it had for centuries before, watched by thousands of visitors who came to see a piece of living history. Most of them never knew how close they had come to witnessing something very different, or how one woman's split-second decision had preserved the peace and tradition they had traveled so far to experience.